Hey, I used to be a boomer, but since COVID, I've become a Zoomer. I want to tell my Zoomer friends, mark your calendars, December 1 and 2, 2020, CIPMM is having its virtual summit. So don't be late. Put your registration in.
Yeah, I'm taking the call from my bathroom. I'm hiding from Wyatt. Yeah, I have no problem. I'll do the report in the morning. Hold on. What? Oh, Wyatt.
Yep. No, I understand. Hold on just a second. During COVID, multitasking has taken on a whole new meaning. We went from breaking bread to baking bread. Yeah, no, I'm still here.
For being here today. I hope you have a wonderful weekend and we'll see you next time. Thanks again. Work at home chic.
Of COVID-19 is two important skills, and they both relate to screwing. The first one is finding pressure-treated lumber. It's like finding toilet paper at the start of COVID-19. Everybody wants them, and nobody seems to have it. The second important skill is applying skirting around your deck.
Hello, greetings, bonjour, bienvenue. My name is Eve Corbin. I'm with CIPMM. I'm the chair for the webinars committee. And as you could have seen, we have the virtual summit coming on. It's in a month from now, so we're very busy organizing it. So I just wanted to introduce today it's a presentation from Sophie Dubourg that is with the Center of Expertise on Mental Health in the Workplace. So Sophie Dubourg has been a manager on the Mental Health Center of Expertise since 2019. Before that, she's been a professional as well and an advisor on mental health, and she had other function related to HR, well-being, and executives. So we're very glad and grateful to have Sophie today. Before talking more about today, I'm just going also to make a quick announcement for the next webinars coming up. So for the next webinar, next week we're taking off because it's Remembrance Day. So the following one is on the 18th of November. So the 18th of November is with it's with Pierre Lavoie. So he's very well known, especially in Quebec. He's been a very prominent figure. He's a triathlete. He's done Ironman, and he has a personal story of resilience. 2 out of his 4 kids died from a very rare disease. And so he has a great story, great journey. It's about a leadership. And I invite you to come. And for the ones that are English speaking, I know that this is in French, but because you don't have the opportunity to practice as much French, not being in the office on a daily basis for lots of you, it could be a good thing just to attend this one. It's very inspiring. And then the following one will also be another inspiring one. And it's about, it's on teamwork. It's not about the medal. And it's another sport champion. So we're going to be very happy to have those very inspiring speakers. So just to come back to, and then after that, after the 25th, we're going to stop for the holidays, and we started to program our new season. It's starting on the 13th of January. We already have many of the webinars confirmed, and we are lucky enough to have Sophie that is coming back for a webinar in French next spring. So thank you very much for staying with us. And for the ones that want to join for the virtual summit, it's going to be the 1st and 2nd of December. And don't worry if you cannot have the 2 days. All the sessions, there will be at each time slot 4 sessions in the same time, and they're all recorded. So if you cannot get off work for half a day or a full day, you can still watch those sessions later. So it's a full 2 days. And because there's at any time frame, there's always 4 sessions going on, you will have for the small price of $275, you will have the equivalent of 8 full days of training. So feel free to take advantage of that. And if someone has been super inspiring to you, feel free to watch and watch again and again. And among the inspiring speakers that we will have, there's a Chantal Petitclerc that is also a multi-champion, and she's a great athlete. And she's now a senator. So without any further time, I'm going to introduce you to Sophie Dubourg. So Sophie is our speaker today. For most of the people, you will see there's a polling function that you may not have access to when you do the webinar through the web browser. If you don't have access to that function, please put your answers in the chat. We'll take care of that. And if you have any question, there's a Q&A function that should be at the bottom of your screen. If it doesn't work, put questions in the chat and we'll deal with that as well. So we're very lucky to have someone as Sophie. Sophie has been highly recommended from a former colleague that had the chance to see her. And this person never gave me such enthusiastic recommendation. So I'm really looking forward to having Sophie with us today. Thank you very much. And Sophie, over to you.
Thank you so much, Eve, for the warm introduction. Much appreciated. Thank you so much for having me join your meeting to speak about mental health, but also the key resources that the Center of Expertise on Mental Health in the Workplace, the COE, but as well as our partners have to offer when it comes to mental health. My understanding is that most of you are using your lunchtime to attend these Wednesday webinars, and therefore, thank you so much for attending. I do realize that time is precious, and I truly hope that this is going to be a good use of your time. This presentation is meant to be informative yet interactive, and therefore I've planted some poll questions to enable the interactive part, and thank you very much in advance for your participation. Rest assured that your answers are confidential. There's only one question, which I call it my icebreaker question, that I will ask you to put in your answers through the Zoom chat. And on that note, I think it's also important to mention that this session is really for you, and therefore this is a safe space, and don't hesitate to be frank, to be bold and candid. My first question for the chat room goes as is. How, in one word, are you feeling today? Taking under consideration what is currently happening around the world, the wave 2 of the pandemic in Canada, what's going on in your work life, in your personal life. So in one word, how are you feeling today? And the reason why I'm asking this is that we tend to forget to take a pause and step back and really reflect on everything that's happening into our life and how this is taking a toll sometimes in our health, our physical health, but also our mental health. These type of questions are also being asked when you're perhaps exercising meditation or mindfulness, or if you're taking some resilience training. And so being able to be true to yourself, ground yourself, and really think about, am I feeling okay? And if not, what is it that I can do about it? Where do I have control? So as an example, the pandemic, we have no control about the pandemic, but what you can do about it to continue to navigate somewhat positively through it with concrete actions, your actions. That's when you can actually build on your resilience and have a sense of hope, especially right now. I'm just going to be looking at the chat as well to see some of the comments that have come up so I can actually feed our conversation here. As I'm looking at defeated, too busy, numb, and so good. And so as you can see, we can have emotions that are going from one to another end of the spectrum. And so I think it's really important to acknowledge that. For those of you who are not familiar with the mental health continuum, rest assured, because at the end of this presentation in the next couple of days, I'll be sharing you the link of the mental health continuum. But in a nutshell, it's really where are you positioning yourself from good mental health to the red when you should be seeking help from professional healthcare. And so good mental health is considered green. The yellow is when you're not completely green, but you have a mix of yellow, so you're still okay. And research have shown that it's basically impossible to always be in the green and always feeling 100% great. And that most individuals are always navigating from the yellow to the green. And then after the green, you have, so you have the green, you have the yellow, then you have the orange. And the orange is when you're starting to really noticing a change. I always use the example of, you know yourself. And when you're starting to experiencing some feelings or symptoms where you're like, this is not me. Good example. You used to be a very good sleeper. You have no problem falling asleep, having a good night's sleep from 6 to 8 hours. But then you're noticing that every night, 2:25 at night, you're just waking up. And then you're wondering, why am I all of a sudden waking up at 2:25 in the morning? Well, it's probably most likely that something in your subconscious is brewing at the back of your head. And then you're constantly thinking it could be about work, or it could be about an incident that's happened at work, or a situation that's eating out of you. But then when you're going to sleep, you think that you've put it aside and you're having a good sleep. And then something triggers in your mind, and then you're waking up at 2:25. And so knowing that and acknowledging this is like, okay, you know what? I need to do something about it and take some time to think, why am I waking up? Is it something that is becoming recurrent? Is it something that, you know, I know for myself, it's always happening, let's say once or twice a year, because I know at work or in my personal life, I tend to be living in a peak or whatnot. And so how are you feeling today? I want you to keep on thinking about this question, because I will have a poll question that will be linked to that. I think I was looking at the chat and someone said, well, it's my son that's waking me up in the middle of the night. And yes, of course, I truly acknowledge that. A lot of you are parents. Some of your children are going through a phase where, you know, like they could be like waking up screaming at 3 a.m., like every morning, every 3 a.m. for the next 2 weeks. But then, right, of course, you know that this is something that is normal, let's say for a 3 to a 5-year-old, and that you're just trying to make sure that your child feels safe, and that they know that they are there, you are there for them. And so sorry that you're going through this. It's not easy. But for those who are living, like, especially like particular situations at home that's keeping them up at night, it could be also a loved one living with you who is having trouble sleeping and is knocking at your door saying, I can't sleep, you know, do you want to chat? Do you want to have like hot cocoa milk so we can talk about it? And so being able to share that, because it's not because those situations are happening that you're not working the next day. And if you feel comfortable sharing those kind of realities with your manager, I would tend to invite you to do so, because the more that your manager knows about what you're going through and what you're facing, the better that they are going to feel equipped to better support you. And I always tend to say, share what you feel comfortable sharing. Some individuals are an open book and they share everything that's going on in their lives. But for some individual, and that is based on various factors such as, you know, your culture, where you're from, how you were raised as a child or as a young adult, that you don't necessarily feel comfortable all the pieces of your personal life. And I remember like one consultant was telling us when they came as part of our team to do some coaching exercise, they were saying, you know what, share what you feel comfortable sharing. And, you know, make sure that when you're sharing that information, that you're clear about the fact that, you know what, this is me sharing this with you. I don't want anybody else to know. Or you know what, it's okay. You can share it with senior management, or you can share it as part of a team meeting. But make sure that you establish those ground rules with your manager. And as a manager, if you are a manager, it's important to really foster an environment based on trust. I'll get back on this because I have a segment on tips for managers, but also for employees. But again, keep that question about how you're feeling today in your mind as we continue to navigate through this presentation. Now moving on into the outline of my actual presentation. Believe it or not, there's a bit of a structure within what I have to offer to you this afternoon. First, I'll do a brief overview of the Center of Expertise on Mental Health in the Workplace, the COE. I'll touch on the impacts of COVID-19 and what the current data is currently saying. I'll also provide you with a list of mental health resources and supports. And rest assured, like I mentioned at the end of the presentation, most likely in the next couple of days or so, you will have a list in terms of the suite of services, resources, and tools that are available for not only public servants, but in some cases for all Canadians. And therefore, this is something that you can share with your colleagues, with your family members, with your loved ones, with an individuals like working in another jurisdictions and whatnot. As I said a few seconds ago, I'll be touching on tips for employees, but also tips for managers. When I say employees though, managers are also employees. Let's not forget about that. So when I say employees, what I'm really saying is that tips for anybody as an individuals, even though I do realize that the realities of the two groups are different, if you're a manager and executives or an employee. So that's why I have two segments about the two. But when I'm saying employees, I'm thinking about executive managers and individuals who are not in a managerial role. And then I'll finish this off with obviously question periods and quick Q&As. And as Ev mentioned, we will be using the chat room for you to answer your questions, but also share some comments about, you know, anything pertaining to mental health and the relation to COVID-19. As I mentioned earlier, I've planted a few poll questions for you, and therefore, before launching into the content of my presentation, I would like to get a sense of everyone's current situation. And so the first poll question goes as is. Where are you doing your work? So where are you actually like working from? Option number one, I'm working from home, remote work. I am working on site. Business as usual, nothing has changed since the beginning of the pandemic for me, for instance. And not, I'm saying for me, just hypothetically, that's not what happened. I'm actually working from home, but I've been talking to some colleagues and they have told me, Sophie, nothing has changed since the pandemic. I am required to work on site. And therefore, if that is the case for you, chose that option. Mixture of on-site and remote work. So I'm doing a mix of both. I'm working part-time, let's say from home, and part-time from the work site. I know some of you are maybe doing this on a pilot like basis. I remember like back in March and April, some were already testing it out. And so let's say you were a team of 4. You had 2 employees working on site for 2 weeks. And then after that, they would work from home for the next 2 weeks. And then you had basically your job shadowing individuals who were basically taking on when you were actually not working on site. So 2 on site while 2 are working from home, and then you're actually switching where 1 is working from home and 1 is working on site. And so a few seconds for everybody to respond. Oh, look at this, the results are in. And so 95% of you are actually working remotely from home, 0% on site, a mix of both 5%, so 1 answer, And then please could find in the chat, we didn't have anybody. And so thank you for your response. That really gives me a good overview of what the audience is comprised of, the 95% working from home. And so through the chat, if you're interested in sharing, like, how has it been for you working from home? There's been so many information sessions. There's also like service providers trying to help employers navigate through employees working from home. So making sure that employees have the right tools to do their job. Do I have just a tablet or a laptop? Do I have 2 screens? Do I have a keyboard? Do I have a mouse? Do I have a good chair? Do I have a desk? And so when I was doing all kinds of presentations throughout the system, what I was hearing is that not all of us are set up in a very ergonomic way. I've had employees telling me, Sophie, I'm working on my bed every day. I'm working on my couch. I'm working on the kitchen, the kitchen counter. I'm plugged in next to the stove. I've had individuals saying, I'm working at home and I don't have AC. And it is very, very hot. I'm trying to balance it out and working on my patio because it's so hot outside. We had some heat waves, as you know, throughout the summer. And so some have said to me also like positive situation where they said to me, Sophie, I'm just utilizing everything that I have at home. My partner was able to build me like a little tablet and he fixed it through the wall. And so you can put it up, put it down, and you're actually, this is like your working station. I've had individuals tell me that they took off their basically closet windows and they've built in an office. And if you're just Googling this type of ideas, it's very creative, it's very innovative. Like think about it, removing your closet doors and creating this inside workstation. But all that to say is that it has not been easy for everyone. And that's something to be mindful of, again, as a manager navigating through this pandemic. I just want to take a little pause again to just see what kind of comments have gone through the chat so far, because as I said, I want this to be interactive. This session is for you. I started my job during the start of the pandemic, and I'm the only employer that's never been in the office. And so that is unique to that individual. Thank you, Anne, for sharing this. And so, you know, how have you been living through this pandemic is very important, and having the space to talk about your reality versus the rest of the team, right? And so that's quite important. For myself, for instance, last time I was on site was on March 13. I was giving a presentation to Human Resources Council, and they were like just cleaning up like the stage, and you know, I had to deliver the presentation, and next thing we knew, it was not the 13th, but maybe the 12th, but then the 13th was my last day. And so I remember exactly for the 12th and the 13th where I was at, what I was doing, and I was telling my employees, because I had this feeling, I said, take your tablets before leaving for the weekend, and then, you know, take work material just in case, because I have a feeling that this is not going to last for the next 2 weeks. And my team thanked me. They said, Sophie, like you kind of saw it coming. And so, you know, they felt good knowing that at least they had their tablets so they can continue to work. Little that we knew that this was going to last for 8 months. Best thing for me, I save so much time for not driving, save money on gas, and I'm chatting with people I choose to talk to. And see, thank you so much for sharing that, because we tend to forget that since the pandemic, some individuals, some employees have looked at this as a very positive thing. It was an opportunity to take a pause, to reflect on your life, to reflect on your values, to really finally be able to be at home, to have dinner with your children, spending time with them. Like Marlene mentioned, I don't have to do the commute, so that it is reducing for some, even an hour and a half or 30 minutes of commute. You don't have to use your car to go to work. Some have said to me, you know, I can focus now, it's so quiet. I don't have the drop-in of employees and hallway conversation. So for some who really appreciate that kind of environment, it was a blessing in the sky. But for those who are living by talking to individuals, having those social interaction, it has been difficult for them. So I think it's really important to acknowledge the different experiences that employees have been living. For the ones that have not yet introduced themselves, feel free to do so in the chat room. And thank you so much. Those are the organizers of this event. And so moving on with slide number 4, the Center of Expertise on Mental Health in the Workplace. Well, just to give you a little bit of the context, the Center of Expertise on Mental Health in the Workplace is housed in the Chief Human Resources Officer at Treasury Board Secretariat. And we are co-chaired by the Union Public Service Alliance of Canada, PSAC. The Center of Expertise was established in 2017 to provide support, expertise, and leadership in addressing psychological health and safety in Canada's federal public service. And so just to give you a little bit of a chronicle events, in 2016, the first federal workplace mental health strategy was launched enterprise-wide. And it really had 3, call it bucket or strategic objectives. And those objectives were changing the culture, building capacity, measuring reporting, and continuous improvement. And so that was in 2016. And following the launch of that first federal workplace mental health strategy, it was decided that we needed to put a Center of Expertise on Mental Health in the Workplace to support organizations in advancing the mental health file while also adopting the national standard for psychological health and safety in the workplace. For those who are curious about what the national standard is about, it's really a tool. It's really a tool to help organizations build a psychological health and safety management system. And so just to give you a brief example, this tool provides you checklists and tools, for instance, on how to ensure that in the workplace, you're addressing the 13 psychosocial factors. And again, I invite you to go on YouTube or you just Google 13 psychosocial factors, and you will see that factors such as workload, work-life balance, influence, leadership, psychosocial support, physical safety, are part of hazards that needs to be considered because those factors will have an impact on the psychological health and safety of your employees. And then what the standard is inviting organizations to do is really to do an assessment to understand which factors have a higher risk of impacting your employees' mental health. Quick example, workload is part of the 13 psychosocial factors. And so workload as a factor can really have an impact on an employee's mental health. If your workload is too heavy, if you have no control of your workload, if you don't clearly understand what is expected of you, your objectives, then it could have a very detrimental impact on your psychological health. And if you don't work on the preventative side and the awareness side, it can lead to psychological harm. You've heard of burnout. Burnout is sometimes that can happen when you're feeling overwhelmed and that too much workload was put on yourself. And then unfortunately, you don't feel like you have the capacity to overcome what is being thrown at you. And then it could lead to having a disorder or a mental illness, but sometimes it could be temporary, that you're just having poor mental health. And that poor mental health could be associated with workload. Moving on to slide number 5, and this is where I would like to stop again and have a poll question. And I have to say, perhaps this is a little bit of a selfish one because I would like to get a sense of the composition of the participants, because my understanding is that this community is mainly comprised of federal public servants, but that some of you are not working in a federal public service, but in other jurisdictions. So it would be really interesting for me to know where you're working. And so which sector do you work in? As one option, in the federal public service, in another public sector jurisdiction, in the private sector, in the nonprofit sector, or the last one, other. And so for those who are not able to see the question, again, which sector do you work in? A, federal public service, B, public sector jurisdiction, C, the private sector, D, nonprofit sector, or E, other. And for those who cannot see the answer, please feel free to use the chat room to type in your question and submit your answers. We'll just give everyone a few seconds. And the poll results are in a federal public servant, as expected, 90%. In another public sector of jurisdiction with 5%, 1 response. In a private sector, 1, another 5%. And for the nonprofit and others, 0. So thank you very much. I think it validates what I was given in terms of information where we were actually going through the logistics for this event. So thank you very much for participating and answering. Before I review some key resources, let me just give you a brief overview of some of the key trends that we are seeing across Canada on mental health. And therefore, moving on to slide number 6, we already know that based on research of past pandemic, that the experience of quarantine is associated with increased anxiety, depression, but also post-traumatic stress, and impacts can be felt even years later. We're hearing about a second pandemic. So on top of the sanitary pandemic, we're talking about a mental health pandemic. And so more and more, you're going to be hearing on the news the importance. We've heard it recently, unfortunately, the very horrific news of what happened in Quebec City. This has raised a lot of concerns, a lot of discussions when it comes to mental illness and the impact that it can have on someone. There was discussion about, the importance of working on the preventative side, but also the importance of trying to take action towards reducing stigma when it comes to mental illness. And I just wanted to make like a little parenthèse here, because I think it's really important when you're having this kind of discussions with your colleagues or your loved ones to listen, because often what we hear, where we see a crime such as this one, and then the mental health of that individual is being brought on, that is the discussion. We really have to be careful on how we're conducting those discussions, and this is why. For instance, this individual said that they had past experiences with mental health, with poor mental health or mental illness and psychotic episodes. It's important to know that it's not because someone is going through a psychotic episode that they will take a weapon and randomly act in a criminal manner. And so, and I think it's really important, doctors have said that already in the news, that we cannot associate a mental illness with criminals. And so that is very clear, because otherwise it will increase the stigma with individuals living with psychotic episode, either on a recurrent basis or periodically. And so, again, talking about the fact that we have a second pandemic, an echo pandemic, is something to really consider, to be mindful of, but it's really important to have a sound and informative debate about this. And so just looking at the data that you see on your screen here, and I'll give you like a few seconds to take a look at it, because I know sometimes it's for some it could be difficult to listen to someone or listen to or watch someone, but also reading a slide. And so what we have is approximately 2/3, 67% of Canadians aged from 12 and older, and in the 10 provinces rated their mental health as very good or excellent in 2019, down from almost 3/4 to 72% in 2015. And so we wanted to highlight some key stats here. And so 38% say their mental health has declined due to COVID-19. 46% feel anxious and worried. That is quite high, but this is the reality. 14% are having trouble coping. And I don't know if you remember at the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of coping mechanisms that individuals had could no longer have access to. Think about your social interactions with your community, your opportunity to go and exercise at the gym, right? Gyms were closed. And so a lot of the coping mechanisms that they would revert back to were taken away from them because of the pandemic, because there was some public health measures that you had to respect. For some, it was jogging with a friend or doing power walking or walking with a friend. And all of a sudden, you can't do that. And think about it, at the time there was no mask. At the time they were asking us to stay at home as much as possible, to try to avoid having to going to the grocery store on a regular basis. We went from only go once a week, only go, well, now it's twice or once every 2 weeks. And so more and more those coping mechanisms were taking away from us. And then when the cities decided to reopen the economy and reopen the cities, that's when slowly, little by little, individuals were slowly getting back their coping mechanism. 6% have had suicidal thoughts. Suicide has always been present before the pandemic. And I think experts are keeping a close eye on suicide because the pandemic can definitely have its toll on individuals. And then 2% have tried to harm themselves in response to COVID-19. As you know, there's other factors when you think about the financial aspect that the pandemic has had on individuals. You may be living with someone who's not a public servant or working in industry where the industry had to shut down. I can think about the restaurants right now. I can think about the hotels. I can think about, at some points, even construction workers couldn't work for a certain period of time, and then they had the green light to reopen. And so I think it's really important to kind of, again, coming back to the different realities that our employees, all of us are facing, and not to judge anybody's situation as we continue to navigate. You know, when we tend to say, you know, ça va bien aller, things will be all right, we're in the same boat. We may be in the same boat, but our view from the boat are quite different. And so let's be mindful a little bit of that. I'm looking at the Q's and A's. And then perhaps we'll come back to this later on. Just moving on, just so I can finish the data section of it. In general, less Canadians are reporting excellent or very good mental health. In May 2020, Statistics Canada, StatsCan, reported that only 48% of Canadians rated their health as excellent or very good. This is nearly 20% below the statistics from the 2019 Canadian Community Health Survey. At that time, it was 67%. According to other survey from May 2020, just to give you additional data, conducted with Canadians from all provinces and territories by the Canadian Mental Health Association in partnership with UBC researchers, 38% of Canadians indicated that their mental health has declined specifically due to COVID-19. It is important to also note that the degree to which mental health impacts individuals vary based on a wide range of demographic factors. So when we're talking about vulnerable populations, you can think about individuals living with a disability, living with a mental illness, living with violence at home, Aboriginal people, our elders, our frontline workers, just to name a few. In spring of 2020, another team within the Office of the Chief Human Resources Officer, OCRO, undertook an employee journey mapping exercise to better understand how COVID-19 is impacting public servants specifically. They learned that one, many were feeling confused, overwhelmed, sometimes even frustrated, stressed and exhausted, struggling to balance their home, but also their work lives. Employees deemed non-critical to government operations had a high level of fear of concerns about their vulnerability to future layoffs. Many expressed a need for better, more consistent messaging and clearer direction, communication, and guidance from management at all levels. So I'm sure like those facts, those insights are no surprise to you. And then moving on to slide number 7 for another poll, again, to keep this interactive. At the moment, what is causing you the most work-related stress as a result of COVID-19? And so option number 1, concern for my physical health and safety, commuting to work site, uncomfortable home office setup. And then B, concern for my mental health, anxiety about contracting COVID-19, loneliness, isolation from colleagues. C, balancing work and caregiving responsibility, care for your children, elderly relatives. And last, it's D, if you want to choose other. And so at the moment, what is causing you the most work-related stress as a result of COVID-19? And you know what I was talking to you about? Like, think about the first question I asked you as an icebreaker. How are you feeling today? And when I said to you, take under consideration your personal, but also your work life, this is where we're digging deeper by asking you what is causing you the most stress when it comes to work. And so I'll give you a few seconds to respond. Excellent, results are in. Concern for my physical health and safety, one response, 5%. Concern for my mental health, anxiety about contracting COVID-19, 21%. But the first place goes to balancing work and caregiving responsibility, children, elderly relatives, your loved ones who are living at home with 47%. And the last other is 26%, which comes third place. And so if you feel comfortable going through the chat room to kind of share like what you have in mind when it comes to others, like some of your challenges that you are facing that's causing you stress. And so coming back to our number one position, balancing work and work-life balance, this is something that was a concern before the pandemic, but now more than ever, and this is why. There is a concept called work integration, right? Where it's basically work is at home and home is at work. And more, instead of using work-life balance, some researchers have been using work integration, especially with the increase of the technology. We had our iPhones, our Blackberries back then. And so when you were in the bus commuting back home, you were still working. When you were at home watching a show and you would hear your phone buzzing and you would answer, you would still be working. And so having those two spheres being kept intertwined have shown researchers that it's becoming more and more difficult to separate the two. And now think about it with the pandemic, with all of you at what, 90–95% working at home, that means it's becoming even more difficult to separate the two. And is it really fair to say that you can allocate 100% of your time on work and 100% of your time trying to take care of your children? Not so much. And that's why we've been asking managers to really be flexible and show empathy and care towards their employees, because the work integration reality is something that we will most likely have to continue to navigate for the next months or so. Moving on to our slide number 8, I just wanted to let you know that we have a lot of resources that are available to you. Just to name a few, we have the Wellness Together Canada app, which is an app that really does a self-exam, a self-evaluation of where you are at when it comes to your mental health. And based on the results that you have, then you are being triggered to access some key resources. And so I won't be going through all the resources that the Center of Expertise is promoting, such as our virtual information hub, which we're really proud of. But what I'll do, because I'm conscious of the time, is that as I promised earlier, you will be receiving a list of all those useful resources, not only created by the Center of Expertise on Mental Health in the Workplace, but also by the Canada School of the Public Service, the Mental Health Commission, the Mental Health Association. And those resources are good for employees, but also for managers. I would like to jump in to slide number 9. Just a quick poll question. Are you familiar with the Mental Health and COVID-19 for Public Servants Resource Hub? And don't be shy. This is, again, something for us, the Center of Expertise. We want to know if the work that we're doing on a promotional side is actually working. But, you know, no hard feelings. Just say no if you're not sure. Again, this is meant to be like a frank discussion. And by having those answers, we'll be able to better work on our promotion and awareness strategy when it comes to our information hub. We've been promoting this since the beginning of the pandemic. We have put something in place quite fast. It took a matter of, I want to say, maybe like 7 days to have 7 or 2 weeks in place. And our communities of practice when it comes to mental health, we're so happy that we were able to put something together so fast, but it was useful for them to kind of like market our virtual information hub to them. So just a few seconds to let you know. And so I love it. This is no at 74%. So that is to me a validation that more work needs to be done. And so we have yes at 16%, that's really great. And then not sure, 11%. Again, if I'm combining 71% to 11%, that means that our center needs to do more work on that front. So thank you so much for being frank about this. Very much appreciated.
Sophie?
Oui?
It's Eve here. I just saw in the chat some very touching comments. It was not shared with all attendees, but only with panelists. So I'm not going to say the name, but I just wanted to thank the people that had shared with the panelists what they're going on, because I saw some very touching stuff in the chat. Thank you.
No, thank you so much. And let's pause on that and let's go through the chat. Thank you so much, Eve. Hi, I'm from Ottawa, DND. I like this interactive approach, which allows for people to share. Very thankful to CIPMM organizers for inviting someone from TBS Center of Excellence. Ms. Sophie Dubourg does a great job with this topic. It allows for sharing with one another in a virtual environment. Une vraie bouffée de chaleur. Merci beaucoup. C'est vraiment apprécié. Puis, comme je disais, c'est vraiment pour vous. Donc, tout commentaire est extrêmement apprécié. I'm facing challenge managing technology and tasks related to work. That's something that keeps on coming up. And my advice, as much as is not, it could be like said, well, this is a generic one, like reach out to your manager to see how, you know, technology can be fixed. But I do realize in organizations that you have like an IT team who's trying to do the best that they can to actually address the technology situation. For instance, I can say for myself at the beginning of the pandemic, my tablet was not working well at all. And so for me, I talked to my manager about it. I said, because she noticed, she was like, Sophie usually responds like so quick. And now there's like, she was like, Sophie, for you, delays of like 5 minutes when I'm saying this is urgent, it's not like you. And I said, I'm lagging, it keeps on lagging. And so she put pressure so that my tablet could change, could be replaced, because we were going through phased approach for changing the employees' tablets. And so she accelerated the process. I was able to get a good tablet, and now things are working great. I also have my personal additional screen. And so don't stay in silence. Reach out to the services internal to your organizations to ensure that you have the right tools to do your job. Without the technology, it becomes frustrated. Trust me, I know. And so where you're trying to produce your best work, but then the technology is not responding, or you don't have the tool, you need to talk to your manager to express how it actually is impacting your productivity. If you link it with your productivity, but also your well-being, trust me, you will be heard. At first, I'm so glad we could have Sophie. Thanks so much for the warm recommendation that comes from Eve. Of course, thank you. And so, Eve, let me know if I haven't touched on other additional comments, either through the chat or the Q's and A's.
It's the one just after that, Fosta, that...
Oh, yes, absolutely. Thank you. I just scrolled down because I'm using my phone for this. So thank you. To have to go back at the office, I have diabetes, asthma. My husband is just off chemo. I'm really sorry to hear about that. My son has a heart problem. I wish working from home permanently would be an option wherever I will work. First, you are in my thoughts. It's not an easy situation. You're dealing with a lot. And so first, I truly hope that you're trying to do the best that you can to take care of yourself. You need to take care of yourself so that you can be best positioned to take care of your loved ones, your son, your husband. They need you, you need them. And so being able to take care of your physical and your mental health is quite important. Again, resources will be shared with all of you, including yourself, who took the courage to share that through the chat. And so, that's what I was talking about, to being frank and to really have the courage to speak up without the fear of a judgment or comments or whatnot. It is with your sharing, just so you know, you are not alone. Sometimes we think we're alone dealing with so many things in our personal life, and then we realize, oh, hold on, my colleague is living through something very similar. And so I can understand why you would want and why you would need also to work from home, either on a long-term basis or permanently. And my advice for this would be, again, if you feel comfortable, to talk about your current manager, to say, you know what, I'm not quite sure what's going on. There's a departmental plan with the easing of restriction and going back on site and work. But I would like to share with you that if there would be a situation, if we would have to go back into the workplace in the next 2 months, 3 months, or 6 months or so, that I would like to opt for continuing to work from home. I'm speaking for experience. I've had an employee told me that it's the same situation. They're living with someone who is vulnerable to the coronavirus, and herself also having a mental illness. And she said to me, Sophia, I just want to be like proactive in a sense that I want to let you know that if there was an opting opportunity, that I would like to work from home, right? The person was not working directly for me at the time. I was just stepping in for someone else. And I told her, I said, first of all, thank you for sharing. Second of all, kudos to you for being so proactive and thinking already ahead and saying, you know what, this is what's happening now. It's been working great. I love working from home. And in the event of, this is how I see myself continuing to navigate through this pandemic. So thank you so much for sharing. I'm looking at another, completely agree, Sophia's amazing. Thank you so much. Another comment, my observation during the pandemic is management, DM, ADM, managers sending out email with links to resources. From my perspective, what's missing is management talking to employees. Although it may not be the intention, it feels like management is doing things that can easily check a box to demonstrate what they are doing. Humanity is missing. You know what? Thank you so much for your comment, because it's a really great link to what I was proposing throughout my presentation, is tips for everyone and tips for managers. So one thing, yes, I agree. Sharing information is one thing. Having discussion is another. Taking an action is another. And so what we were noticing is that executive and managers don't necessarily feel comfortable having those discussions. They don't feel comfortable when you're talking about sentiments, symptoms, internal feelings, personal realities. And so we are working with the Canada School of Public Service at revamping the mental health training curriculum, but we've been organizing events called Power Chat. We also had another one with Leading with Empathy, and rest assured, I'll share you some of those links, because my understanding is that the school is broadcasting them repeatedly. So for those who were not able to attend, there's also a really great deck for senior management on how to lead with empathy and show care and be genuine about it. And that is so important to have a manager. I always use that example to say, I'm here to support you, whatever you need. And when it's time to support, you don't see any action. When you're asking for some flexibility, you know, like right away, collective agreement is being evoked or policies are being evoked. When as a manager and executive, we need to continue to educate the community to say, find your opportunities of demonstrate flexibility and working on that flexibility muscle. And so there are ways where you can accommodate informally your employees. You don't necessarily have to open the box of, you know, like sometimes you do, but sometimes you don't necessarily have to conduct labor relations and get unions involved. Sometimes it's just a really good understanding between your employee and yourself to say, you know what, this is what's happening. I can work from this time to this time. And then for the remaining period, I'll make it up on Thursday and Friday. I'll be using some leave. It's really to have those really powerful discussions with your managers. Obviously, if your manager doesn't build that environment based on trust, it will become very difficult. And that's why, again, like I said, we're working, myself and my team, with the Canada School of Public Service to really equip managers and employees to say, you know what, that checkbox, like the participants mentioned, is one thing, but then if you're taking the pulse of employees to see how they're feeling and how they feel they're being managed is a different thing. So we need to really combine the two and making sure that we are concretely supporting our employees. Perhaps managers need tools, support to encourage them to have conversations, while employees have a responsibility to find resources. Absolutely. For some, the addition seeking info may be too much. And so that is a very good point. For instance, informal conflict management services, ICMS, is there for managers, for executives, for DMs, for everyone who would like to receive tools on how to have difficult conversation or sensitive conversations with your employees. They will literally sometimes like build a script for you to use an executive and as a manager. You can even practice with them and foresee like potential like reactions for your employees. So ICMS is not all the time when there's conflict or an issue. Sometimes it's like you want to be equipped, you want to make sure you're saying the right thing, that you're behaving the right way. And so ICMS is there. And you know what? I like the fact like the comment is about it's a two-way street, right? It's employees being involved, searching for the information, but managers also being involved and searching for answers. And let's not forget, when it's showing empathy towards an employee, it's also the opposite. Employees showing empathy towards their managers. They're human too. They're navigating through this. And I always say to managers, show vulnerability. Let your employees know that you are dealing with some stuff as well from a work perspective or a personal perspective. I'm happy that you could make it. Thank you for bringing that up. Good reminder to everyone. Hi, I feel your pain. I changed department just before. It's very challenging. Humanity is missing. I see that through the chat. And so leading with empathy and care, showing vulnerability, being genuine about it, putting yourself in other person's shoes is not something that it's easy for some, but it could be very difficult for others. I always say Brene Brown, if you go on Netflix, Brene Brown, who touches on vulnerability, it's really, it has been eye-opener for a lot of individuals. So I recommend you, when you have some time, to just go on Netflix and take a look at this video. I had like 2 poll questions that I think I would like to focus on those because again, it's an opportunity to take the pulse. I've already touched on a lot of like tips for employees and for managers, and thank you, because I was able to do that through the comments, through the chat. But again, rest assured, what I'll do is just to do a summary of those, just to make sure that nobody feels that they have missed any of my insights and my advice on some of the topics. But you will see that there are common ones. It's about judgment for employees, you know, stay connected, talk about it, you know, and then for managers, create structure, be flexible. I already talked about that. I touched on that, but I'll make sure to do a summary of those. But I want to get to the poll. And so slide number 10, what are your thoughts on return to the workplace? Again, that's a poll question. Option number 1, I want to return to the workplace full-time. I want to work remotely full-time. C, I want to work remotely part-time. D, I am already working on site. Or E, unsure, undecided. And based on the comments I've received, like one of them, right, was saying I would like to work like permanently, like full-time at home. You know, if I would have to predict, I would say that based on what we've heard through other presentations and events, that the most 2 popular answers are working full-time or working remotely part-time. And so let's see what the results are for this group. And so 56%, that's number 1, I want to work remotely part-time. 31%, I want to work remotely full-time. That's 31%. And then the 3rd place goes to, I want to return to work in the workplace full-time. And so that is information that managers and organizations have been using to get a sense of how we're going to do about this when we're creating our departmental plan for the easing of restriction. And so the last poll question that I will leave up like this, it's what's your main strategy for protecting your mental health? You know, when I was mentioning earlier, how you feeling today? And so there's a list of different options. So I'll give you just a few seconds, 5 seconds to answer this. Connecting with family and friends, exercising, meditating, we talked about that. Getting a good sleep, eating healthy foods, doing my favorite leisure activities, others or not sure. I'll wait for the response, and what I'll do, I hope that you have at least 1 key takeaway from this session. And if it's about, I need to better take care of myself. I need to take some time to pause. I need to seek for help. I need to speak to my manager to let them know about what I'm facing, and I will share what I feel comfortable sharing. I will use the list of resources provided by Sophie and share it broadly with my manager so that, you know, not only my colleagues, but also anybody within my organizations will have access to this, and that will help us promote our resources and services. And so in terms of the results of the last poll, I'm interested to see which one comes at number one, connecting with family and friends. Of course, that is something that is missing, as you know, because of the public health measures. We've been doing a lot of it like virtually, but it has been very, very difficult for a lot of us, not being able to hold someone in your arms or to have like dinner, invite people over. So it has been difficult, but I have to say, let's not give up. We will get through this. There's levels of uncertainty, but I think that collectively we can do this. The humanity have shown some resilience in the past. It's not our first pandemic. It's a first in a very long time for the generations that are living right now. But let's stay optimistic. But I think most importantly, let's just have a little sense of hope, because hope gets you through so much. And that is it for me. I'm giving it back to Eve.
Wow. I thank you so much, Sophie. That was a great presentation. So for all our attendees, we all have people around us that may be struggling. So if we're not struggling, we can see a coworker, someone in our family, someone around us. Feel free to invite people to watch the recording. Although people will not be able to ask live questions, the recording will still help people to get some tools. And the PowerPoint with all the links is going to be also available on CIPMM website in the past events section. So I just want to thank so much, Sophie, for that great presentation. Sophie is coming back with us next spring to make the same presentation or a similar one. We don't know where we'll be in spring with COVID. So Sophie is coming back next spring for a French presentation. Probably that we may still be struggling with COVID. Just also take care of yourself, because with the holidays coming, some people will realize that they may not be able to see their families, and that may have a strong impact on lots of people around us, whether they are in our family, co-workers, or else. So even if people are not in procurement, they can still sign up as members for CIPMM and watch the video, also download the presentation and use the links. So all that, I wanted to thank Sophie again. We lost some people because we're just beyond one, but I thank you very much for staying with us, for the one who stayed there. And our two next webinars are also great, inspiring people. So I thank you all, and I hope to see some of you returning in 2 weeks. And again, Sophie, many thanks. It was really helpful. And with the comments I saw, I know you made a difference for lots of people today. So thank you very much.
Thank you. My pleasure. Take care.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.